Hey, my name is Anthony Carroll. In today's video, we're going to be doing a couple upgrades to the mounter bench that we built in the last video. So we're going to be installing a flip-up extension wing, as well as some T-tracks and a stop block. Alright, so what you don't see here is I originally tried to hog this out using my table saw, but that was going to take forever, especially not having a dado blade. So I ended up borrowing a palm router from one of my buddies. Shout out to Jake. And this made it way easier. Just ended up taking 2 passes with a 3/4 inch bit. And here you can see the actual work surface, kind of with everything routed in. So next up, we're cutting off a piece of 3/4 inch plywood, and this will serve as the extension wing for the tabletop. So once I get it rough cut to size, I move it over to the table, rip off the remaining factory edge that was on the 3/4 inch piece of plywood, and start breaking it down into the dimensions that I needed. Okay, now that everything's cut to size, we'll throw it up. And yep, it is lining up fairly well, so happy with that. And we're just going to repeat the steps from before using that 3/4 inch flat bit, taking 2 passes so we don't overwork the machine or the bit. You know, after all, I am borrowing this. I added a T-track that runs kind of perpendicular or horizontal to the surface, and the idea of this actually came from, I will mispronounce his name, but Hassan's ultimate table saw workbench build. So you can clamp a short piece of stock or a long piece of stock up to the edge if you're having to work the edge of the board. So here I'm just laying out the little 2 1/4 inch pieces of 3/4 inch ply, just to make sure that none of the pocket holes will interfere with the T-track. Now that everything's good, I could just throw a pencil mark where the T-track was and just, made that the, hey, don't put a pocket hole here, dummy, area. Drilled in the pocket holes, lay everything out again just to make sure. Clamp it to a 90 degree or a little speed square there just to make sure the angle's at 90 degrees. Throw a few brads in it, glue down on the surface, and then we'll start installing the pocket holes. Alright, so I got everything clamped up using a 4-foot level, some Bessie clamps, a couple of those Irwin F-style quick clamps, and a 1/8 inch drill bit here just to make sure I have a consistent reveal, or a consistent gap rather, and then a piece of the T-track just to make sure that it's in line with the rest of the table. Moving underneath, we took a 12-inch piano hinge just straight off the shelf from Home Depot there, using a self-centering drill bit, and throwing the included hardware into it. I'm using my little Milwaukee M12 cordless screwdriver. This thing doesn't put out a lot of torque, which is exactly what you need in this kind of situation. That way you're not over torquing and potentially stripping out the holes for these screws. Once I'm happy, same thing just for the rest of the screw holes. All right, so I was originally going to use two support wings on this build, but once I held them up and tried to start working through how I was going to physically attach these and still have everything function and fit, and this thing to fold down flat against the workbench there, I realized I wasn't quite smart enough to figure out all that geometry, so one's going to have to do. Here I'm just cutting off the corners. I only have 14 inches, so that's the only length that I need. I ended up taking and removing a 2-inch strip from the top, except for the very end where I'm installing a 1/4-inch threaded insert. And to that, we're going to add a bolt. That way we can adjust the level of this workbench as time goes on. Okay, so before I glued and threw some brad nails into this thing, I brought that little extension support over and just gave it a quick test fit, swung it out in all the positions just to make sure that it was contacting the majority of its path along this extra support brace. That way I'm just not holding it up using a single piece of 3/4-inch ply. So I originally thought it was going to be easier just to attach the piano hinge to the support wing here and then move everything over and then screw it into place. But hey, guess what? The best made plans don't always work out. So I ended up just getting a little spacer block, some clamps, and then I can throw a few of the screws in it, take off the clamps, throw the last 2 screws in, and we should be good to go. That will enable this to fold in and then this to fold down flat in a perfect world. So all right, so here it is, me just figuring out that there's not enough space in there to get that self-centering bit into the proper position to screw the holes. So I'll just take a pencil, trace out where these holes that are visible, not covered by the clamps are, and then I'm going to take and turn it around, drill it from the other side, thinking that, hey, the distance is going to be the same. I'll use a large speed square here just to make sure that, you know, it's at 90 degrees, and then same thing as before. Self-centering bit, throw some screws into it once we have it in the right orientation, and then we're good. So the support wing, I wanted it to be short enough to fold inside of the actual cavity there. That way the work surface, or the extension wing, will fold flat up against the table here. That does work, but the issue is with the support wing being so far back, this thing's not very sturdy. So if I had to do it over again, which I will be doing over again, I would take and mount some of those heavy duty shelf hinges, probably the 18-inch variant, directly to the stud here, and then to the work surface itself. That way it can support a good deal more weight, and if I had a larger assembly project, I could use this as an entire workbench. Vices, I'm going to be pretty much limited to using this as a miter stop, which is really what I wanted out of it in the first place. All right, so cutting the T-track, just make sure you go slow. You can use a wood blade, no issues, and definitely make sure that you're wearing some eye protection. So these little pieces of aluminum fly off of that blade with a rabid sense of urgency, and you definitely don't want to catch one of those to the eyeball. Once everything's cut down, then we're just going to use a self-centering bit here again and pre-drill. To fasten it, I'm using 1/2-inch star drive screws. So I think there's 3/8 of an inch or so remaining from the 3/4 inch ply by the time you route in the T-track. So they're going to stick out just a little from underneath. So I ran out of T-track, so after I get the rest in, I'll poly the top, and then look at trying to throw some heavier duty hinges on this thing, and eventually some drawers, that kind of stuff. So if you like the video, if you found anything useful, please like and subscribe. Thanks.